It's so crazy because my mind is just blank. I just go into autopilot. All right. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Danger Knock podcast. Today, I got a special friend, double entendre included, my good friend, Miles' friend.
Hello.
Me and Miles, we knew each other since middle school, but we became better friends more recently in the last year due to our last guest, Christina Bozen, kind of like bringing us back together. So we've been kind of hanging out a lot more, and he's been talking to me a lot about his like recent travels and life experiences. So I was like, we have good conversations there, so this will be a good time to bring that to the pod. But hey, Miles, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Today's been an interesting day, as we just started talking about before the podcast. I'm doing pretty well. Happy. Bonsai's running amok. I got a dog recently.
Here's what we do. Picture of Bonsai right here.
Yeah, he's a little cutie. I was leaving the house just now, and I was like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah. That's a good actually topic to get into first, like bonsai, how bonsai came to be.
Yeah.
And like
that's
finding him and that whole kind of process.
So, first of all, my wife, I got married 6 months ago, tomorrow.
Round of applause.
Yeah. Tomorrow will be 6 months, which we realized today. We're like, holy shit.
Oh, nice.
Time flew by. But essentially my wife immigrated here from Australia, and, if you know anything about the immigration process, it's long and it's difficult, and she hasn't been able to get a job this whole time. And I felt like she needed something to do and somebody to take care of other than myself. And so I was like, we need a dog. It's time. It's early. She just moved here from the other side of the world, but let's get a dog. And so I figured like the best Christmas present was for the whole family really was to go and adopt one. And we were like, didn't hesitate. We were like, do we want a dog? Yeah. All right, let's go right now.
I think for two responsible people, there's never like a best time to do it. It's just to do it, and you guys will figure it out.
Yeah, that's true. Right. And people say the same thing with babies. They're like, nobody's ever ready. You can be as financially
you can only get ready
and mentally stable as possible, but you're never really ready to have one. So it's like, why not now? You know, no time like the present. And the story on his name, actually, we had a really hard time like coming up with his name, but we landed on Bonsai, which is kind of a really funny story because he looks like a little hyena, as you would see in the little photos. And we were like, oh, what about naming him after like a little hyena? On to the next idea. And we realized pretty quickly that he reminded us of my sister's dog, who's a huge mixed breed. We didn't actually know we don't know what he is, but as you can see in the photos, Bonsai looks like a tiny version of our other dog, Sunny, and we were like, oh, he's like a miniature version, like a mini-me. What's cute mini-me type kind of word? And then we're like, oh, bonsai tree.
It's like a miniature version of a bigger thing.
He looks just like Sunny, so we're like, we'll just call him Bonsai. And then a couple weeks later, we find out that in The Lion King, one of the hyenas that's in the movie is named Bonsai. And it was just so funny and ironic that the only other thing that we had considered naming him after was already Bonsai, and we just didn't know it yet.
So you can't make that up.
You can't make that up. It was the perfect. When I found out, I was just like, pardon? The what? And
the stars aligned.
Yeah, he's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
So when you saw like, how did you go about finding him? Was he like a rescue, or did you find him from somewhere else? Was it a dog distribution system? He found you?
Yeah, no, we were just strolling down the street. They're like, want to adopt a dog? Hey, there's one right there.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we had looked up a bunch of different like local shelters, and we wanted to get one from a shelter, wanted to rescue one. Everybody knows about that whole thing. And we had found one that was really near, like a mile away from the house, and we're like, well, that should work. They had a list of all the different dogs that they had there, and we were like just scrolling through, not trying to be too selective. Yeah, we didn't really want to be picky because we're like, is that racist? And
a dog racist?
Yeah, right. So we're just kind of going through, seeing which ones like seemed like they really wanted a home. And the funny thing about Bonsai is that
the one with the cardboard sign.
Yeah, he was like, please adopt me. The funny thing was, at this shelter, like many others, most every dog has like several photos, and a description, like a bio, and they usually write it like in first person, like, "Hi, I'm 7 years old, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. I like chew toys and long walks on the beach." And the funny thing about Bonsai is, for some reason, they didn't have a bio for him at all.
Mysterious.
And instead of these like cute like stock photos that they had of the dog, where they're like behind like or in front of a like a backdrop and whatnot, they had exactly 2 photos of Bonsai. One where he's staring like scared into the camera, like they just ran up to him and snapped a shot, and then another where they must have taken it 2 seconds later, where he's turning around and he's literally standing in a pile of his own pee, like he's actively peeing and looking back at the camera. Like,
they couldn't find a better picture of this kid.
They didn't have 2 more seconds to wait to like put him,
clean him up or whatever.
I mean, get rid of the mess.
Yeah,
you don't even need to do that. Move him over a foot and take a photo. For some reason,
they were setting this dog up to get freaking euthanized.
Yeah, and we were just like, you know what? That's him. That's it. I don't need to know his background. I don't need to know his bullshit backstory. He's standing in a puddle of his own pee. That's the dog.
He needs us. We need him.
Yeah, and we really needed him, and that was the thing. So we called them up, and they said, yeah, we do same day adoptions.
They're like,
we're like, what?
You want him? They're like,
exactly. They were like, really?
The last page of the.
And so we called them up, and we went there. And they were like, they put us in a room, and they were like, we'll be back in a few. They brought in the dog. His name was Grayson at the time. And he was so cute. He was like parkouring off the walls, and he was so excited right from the get-go. But then they had told us that he actually had a brother there at the same time. And his brother's name was Cartman. They said that they were both corgis, which...
I don't see.
Yeah, I don't see.
I guess
corgi.
Maybe like if I squint really hard and look the other way,
he's got that curly tail, which you can see in Bonsai. But his brother Cartman looks exactly like him, but if you just shrunk his legs halfway down.
So he's taller.
He legit. Well, Cartman is much shorter.
Yeah.
So Bonsai is quite a bit taller. So yeah, his brother looks like the corgi that they apparently are. But at that same moment that we were adopting Bonsai, another family was adopting Cartman, which was so cute, but also like bittersweet. It was kind of sad.
The fork in the road.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like these 2 brothers who had spent like at that time the whole 8 months of their lives together. All of a sudden, we've got Bonsai in one hand, and there's this other family with Cartman, and they're looking at each other like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then we're like,
"You'll never
goodbye.
See him again."
Yeah, right. And we thought about like changing, like, you know, exchanging numbers with that family, and been like, "Oh, we should like set up play dates." And then we were like, "Yeah." God, and we just walked out.
The dog won't remember.
Yeah, but we saved a photo of Cartman, and we think about him, and he's like, you know, he's still part of the family, extended. Went with like a Filipino family. It's
maybe every Thanksgiving they'll come back together for a family reunion.
Right. Yeah, no, it's been great.
What was day one like having Bonsai in the house? Like, how do you get used to it? Was he like freaking out?
Good question. Day one is funny because he was so chill right off the bat. Like, he really was just excited. Like, we brought him home, and he was like, new house. Like, it really kind of like felt like a fairy tale. And we had got him a crate. Actually, it was one of Sonny's old crates. And again, Sonny is literally 6 times bigger than
he's
Bonsai.
A giant dog.
He's huge. And so this crate is enormous for him, but I figured better that than him being crammed into a small one. And so he was fine in the crate. He cried a little bit the first couple of nights, but the third night, he didn't cry at all in the night. Like, you know, we got to crate him at night. That's just part of the training process. And we thought, wow, like he got used to it in just 72 hours. It's fine. Well, another thing he had inherited from Sonny was one of those Kong like XL beds that happen to fit right into this XL crate. And it's one of those.
It's like a California king bed for him.
Yeah, it's huge, and in like industrial grade, I mean like military grade dog bed. Like, it's not even comfortable in my opinion, or it wasn't at least. And he had been relatively quiet that night, and we came down at 6 a.m. I don't even remember what woke me up that early in the morning, but I went down the stairs to go see him, and what we saw was just horrific.
He ripped it to shreds.
He ripped it.
He's like, my fucking back.
Yeah. He ripped it to a billion pieces. And the problem was the inside of it is like a styrofoam kind of texture, like this foam that absorbs static electricity. Like, it has affinity for electricity like no other.
He turned into like a supervillain.
Yeah.
Just like
And so it made it like impossible to clean up because every time you went to go like scoop up some of it, it would just fly off because the static
Oh,
would just send it in
true.
every direction. Kelsey and I, like, it took us like 2 hours to clean that up.
That's
It was
crazy.
crazy, and then he didn't have a bed, and so there's been some learning curves, and like now he's crated in a properly sized crate next to our bed, and he's totally fine.
Yeah. I've always like I really love dogs. But it's just like the responsibility is something that I could never like I can't just like get up and leave whenever I want. I'm
Yeah.
looking outside my window and like
Yeah.
looking down at people like freaking walking their dog at like 1 a.m. Not 1 a.m., but like very late, or just for them to go pee or whatever. Like if I have a cat, I could just have them hit the litter box. But
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I've never been a cat person, and now that I have a dog myself, I've had so many dogs, but like with the family my whole life. Like I've had so many dogs, but this is the first time it's been 100% my responsibility. Shared, of course, with my wife, but you know, it really is 100% my
you
responsibility.
can't just leave the house.
Right.
And,
We
like,
can't just leave that. Like even coming here, we had a discussion. Like I live 5 minutes from here, not even, and it had to be a discussion. Like, oh, are we going to leave the dog behind for this five? Like, oh,
Yeah.
Dad, do you mind
watching him for
watching
like,
the dog
for like an hour and a half.
It is a lot, and it's I was saying this to Kelsey earlier that I think Kelsey's my wife. It's upsetting and frustrating, like as a parent, like as a dog parent, that I've never been frustrated with a dog in my entire life except for my own.
That's great. Yeah, because it's like
You know
it's
what I mean?
giving. I love friends who have dogs because then I can go
Yeah.
play with
You
them.
want
I'm like the
you
cool.
love
I'm the
other
fun
people's
uncle.
dogs.
I'm the fun uncle who comes in like, hey, what's good, kiddo? And then like, all right,
And
I'm
then you're
here.
out. Yeah, exactly. And I've never thought that I was going to be in that same situation, but I do find myself like I get home and I see him and I'm excited, and then he starts like acting crazy, and
And
I'm
you're
like,
like, all right, just
back up, man. Like I get annoyed.
yeah. I think the hardest part for me would be like having to understand that they don't know English.
Yeah.
And
that's
I'm
so
like,
funny.
bro, just chill.
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you saying to me?
That's so funny. I was saying that exact same thing to Kelsey. We were standing around in the kitchen, and I don't remember what he did, but he loves the kitchen and tries to. We say that he's like trying to help us cook. So we'll be up there like, and that's the thing. We've been making like a lot of sourdough bread, and I've been home a lot, and so we've been cooking anything and everything. But Bonsai is there with you every single step of the way.
Yeah.
Like he is literally in between.
You turn
your
around, he's at
legs.
your feet.
Not even. He is like standing up and his nose reaches the counter and he's like trying to he actually that's what it was this morning. I was making eggs and I had a piece of toast that I should have known better to keep
A little bit more
a
off the
little
edge.
yeah, and he was sitting there just like licking it off the counter while I'm sitting there cooking the eggs, and I turned to Kelsey and I was like, sometimes I wish he could literally just say something. I
Yeah.
wish he would just be like, Father, can I have the bread? And I'd be like, yes, thank you for asking politely.
Father, may I
Yeah.
procure some sustenance?
Right. I'd be like, absolutely, sir. And,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Instead, he's
It-
behind your back, just
yeah, you can't like communicate with him. And that's the thing. What you'll notice too, and they say this, like dogs don't really respond to negative behavior. Like if you swat them or yell at them and say like you shouldn't do
they're
that,
like, that's an uncorrelated incident.
right. Yeah, they don't
Like-
they don't exactly respond well to that, and you have to like remind them of the good behavior, and that's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to say don't bite. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
right? You have to like reward them when
For
they
not-
calm down and realize that you
Yeah.
don't want the it's challenging.
Do you have one of those like clicker things?
No, I've seen that
See it on
online. I don't
TV.
really understand the point of it.
It's like a
I'm
Pavlov
down-
kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm down to try it out, but it is a lot, you know.
I mean, when I see him, he gets excited and he calms down. So
Yeah, well, the thing is,
he's because guests are there. He knows not to act up.
he loves people, but I think he feels a little like
Self-conscious.
he feels kind of like his space has been invaded when people come to the house.
Yeah.
Because he's way more affectionate like outside. Like if I were to bring him here, he'd be like jumping off the walls,
Yeah,
excited that he's on a vacation.
Yeah.
He's like visiting Nadir.
Yeah.
But when you come
Yeah.
over, he's super chill and he just wants to relax. I think he has a little bit of anxiety. And so like when we had
Because
a
they're
bunch
like,
of
we're
friends
in
over,
his domain.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so when we had a bunch of friends over, did you notice he was kind of like
Like,
ears tucked back? He was
He's
like,
always
whoa.
like that. Yeah. Whatever.
he's
like he'll
not-
get excited because he's like his brain is like, okay, new people. But then he's like, wait, what does this mean actually?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, are you
gonna take
taking my parents?
Are you gonna take my
Like,
bread?
Right, taking my bread. Yeah. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
But the really nice thing is like
He's a good kid.
he is. It's awesome. But it's also really nice just like for the first time in my life being a first time like full-time pet owner, just not thinking about myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to have somebody to take care of. You
Yeah.
know? I've got my wife, I've got a dog. Like, I'm not thinking about what am I doing tomorrow? It's like, how am I going to provide tomorrow? You know what I mean?
That's like my mindset right now is like, it's only me. So like to break out of that would be like a
and it's a
huge
good
step
feeling.
into a better, like
It's
a
a
better
nice
direction,
thing.
but scary.
They're both good directions.
Yeah.
But it is nice. It was a good change of pace, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited about it. It's been great.
Not to make this the whole bonsai podcast, but I was gonna ask like if you wanted to talk more about like the type of dog he is. Like we were like discussing like I've never seen a dog that looks like him. And
Yeah.
you mentioned kind of what he was and
Well, like I said, at the shelter they said that that he was a corgi. I don't really see it. I spent some time like I took some photos and posted it into ChatGPT, and then like gave like
reverse image shirt.
yeah, right. And then but then provided a description. And the closest thing that I've come up with and that the internet has helped me out with is that he's part Basenji,
Like
which
a
would
African wild dog.
exactly, which would kind of check that he looks like a hyena because
Yeah.
there's probably some sort of lineage down the way that
his
like
coloration seems like very like,
he very well could be, I don't know, a couple hundred generations back, part hyena.
That'd be sick.
It would be, but
that's why he's scavenging your freaking
Yeah.
bread. He thinks it's a carcass.
yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah,
wild. He's,
like
super cute though. I
I
love him.
was trying to figure out some way to just like loop this into like dingo dogs so I could talk about Australia.
No, that's great.
But-
Actually, well, that's the thing. Dingoes are wild dogs,
Yeah.
just like the African wild painted dogs that Bonsai looks like.
But
have you ever
dingoes
seen a
look
dingo?
like not in real life, but they look like just a dog. But they look like a it looks like a high end like hybrid like kind of
I cannot begin to explain to you how much a dingo looks like a dog.
it's just a dog.
It's just a
but
dog.
it's not like because like a wolf is like that's a wolf.
Right.
A wolf
like
is
you
a
can tell the
dog
difference.
family.
Wolf is huge.
But a
the
dingo is
paws
just like
are
a
giant.
dog.
No, a dingo.
Insert dingo.
I've seen several in person. As I mentioned earlier, my wife's from Australia, and I've gone there several times. And when you see them like at the zoo, they're out in the outback. You're never gonna see a dingo in Sydney.
Like we see coyotes running around every
and
now
a
and
coyote, is a coyote. They're
then. Yeah,
skinny,
I see from
they're
far away
scrawny.
that's a coyote.
They've got a different like posture,
Long
their stature.
snouts.
It's a coyote. Where a dingo, literally, like you see one, and the way that they play, the way they howl.
Could
and
you
bark,
go like pss, pss, pss to a dingo?
Yes, I
and
would
they'll be
go-
like, all right.
Yeah, I go to like the Sydney Zoo, and you treat them like a dog, like from a distance, and they come up like a little puppy and act all excited, and you're like, that I would 100%.
But that thing would also be like, I could eat you.
I guess that's the funny thing. I know that they're supposed to be kind of
Is
aggressive.
it like, it's like the dolphin of like,
that's
where
pretty-
like they could flip a switch and go nuts on, but for the most part, they see like,
you could kind of say that about any animal, but I think that's
I couldn't say that about any. I don't know about any. Freaking Komodo dragon just
Yeah.
petting him.
But a dingo is they're so cool. I spent like a lot of time at a couple of Australian zoos, and I distinctly remember, like, out of all these amazing creatures you see in Australian zoos, a dingo sticks out to me so well because you're just standing there looking at it like, that's a dog. That's just a dog.
Get this guy out of there.
Yeah,
like get a leash
well,
on him.
I can't remember what the name of this specific zoo was, and it doesn't really matter. But I remember so vividly standing there and looking, and this zoo was like in a suburb. I think this was Featherdale Zoo.
Some rich guy's backyard.
That's the thing. It was next door to a bunch of other homes, and the dingo paddock was adjacent to somebody's house.
That's
so
crazy.
it literally looked from like the audience's perspective
Mm-hmm.
that it was their dog. And so you're standing there going like, I can see there's a gate, like it doesn't belong to that person, but if that gate wasn't there, I wouldn't question it for a moment. It just looks like a pet that's outside.
That's crazy. And then they have like a emu in their front lawn.
Yeah, emus are wild, man. They're scary.
I thought ostriches were scary. Emu is like an even more like evil ostrich.
emus.
So when you went to Australia, so I always like it's on my bucket list of places to go. When you go there, right? There's a whole like perception of like Western countries, so like England, America, whatever. Obviously, Australia is like Oceania, it's not the West, but it's like hella white people there. So it's like, what is like the cultural differences that you noticed when you got there that, other than like accent, that you would signify like this is Australia and not America? Like if accents were all the same, how would you like kind of denote like the cultural differences?
That is a very good question, because I think that is a very hard thing to say,
Mm,
to um
to
to
pinpoint.
answer for Australia, because when I went there, I had a profound reaction to the lack of cultural shock
You're
I
like, I'm just in a
experienced.
weird accented Arizona.
Exactly. That's
Like,
exactly how I felt. I was like, this is literally just fever dream America.
that's
That's what it felt
crazy.
like to me.
Mad Max.
Yes, because the only thing about Australia that I remember being like strange,
Mhm,
and this really isn't much of a cultural thing, I don't think,
mhm.
other than it is just like preference. They like colors, and they're not like afraid to
They're
admit it.
more
Like
like
they'll,
flamboyant or like
yeah, kind of like,
outgoing.
you remember like the 90s here where
Mhm.
people would wear fluorescent stuff
Fuchsia
and like
and
right,
teal
and
and
just like whatever.
yeah.
To me, Australia feels like if they had accents, like you said,
Mhm.
and 9/11 never happened.
They're just willy nilly, just
They're just
free
chill. They're
chilling.
happy. They're
Yeah.
fine. Like they're kind to their neighbors,
Mhm,
and stuck in the 90s. Like it's like, to
mhm.
me, Australia feels like 1999 America.
It's warm Canada. It's like
Right. It's pretty wild. But I would say that, like, and again, I think I didn't get to see the whole country.
mhm,
I went on a road trip and I saw a lot of it, but the people I met were friends and family of my fiance at the time, my
mhm,
wife, and I'm fortunate that like her friends and family are all beautiful, fantastic people. But
mhm,
what I couldn't help but notice is that just how like affectionate and kind everybody is there. Like
mhm.
they're so interested in like getting to know you, and that could partly be due to the fact that like you're getting to know somebody from another country. Like I'm a suburban white dude. I'm
Yeah.
like the very opposite of culturally interesting, if you
Mhm.
ask me.
Well, I was gonna ask, did they have any like how I asked this about you? Do they have any kind of thoughts or like kind of things they notice about you as an American that they've kind of let you know about or whatever? If they've said it out loud or
They did, and it might again just be me more
Mhm.
so than America, but they said that I'm like super um careful with my words, and that like
Mm.
like, and you would have heard her father say this at the wedding,
Yeah, I
actually,
think I
that
remember
he was
saying like
like,
you're very meticulous about what you say and
and then he went on to say that Australians are very like, how's your father?
yeah.
I didn't even know what that meant at the
Cunt.
time. But yeah, exactly. But but I had to look it up and ask Kelsey. I was like, is he suggesting that I am not concerned about how your father is? Is that what he means by how's
Like
your
wait.
father?
Oh.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is he calling me out at the wedding that I've never asked how he's going
Uh-huh.
or how he's doing? That's
Yeah.
in Australia, they say how you going. They don't ask how you're
Like
doing.
what's up?
Yeah. Oh, how you going?
Mhm.
But I thought that's what he was saying, and apparently this is like a common thing in like in the Commonwealth.
Mm.
How's your father is like this phenomenon they experience of like, it's kind of
It has
like,
nothing to do with father. It's
it's
just
no, it's more of like a way of being like, we're nonchalant. Oh,
Mhm.
how's your father? Like, you're
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
me something important. How's your father? Like,
Yeah.
let's change the subject. I'm more concerned with just having a good time.
Mhm.
And
That's
and that
interesting.
checks with what he was saying
Yeah.
anyway. They are very like relaxed. They
Yeah.
want to sit down and enjoy their coffee. Like their coffee culture in Australia is huge. I mean,
Mm.
people say that, but it's one thing to experience it. You go to a cafe, and in America, like you feel the sense that the server is there trying to get a tip and wants you out of there
Mhm.
when you're done so that they can get the next person in. Like we as America view like food as fuel.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit down.
America
and just
runs
have
on
a
Dunkin'. It's not
right. Exactly.
It's not like
America runs on Dunkin'.
it's not a craft.
Right. They run on Dunkin'.
Yeah.
They don't
They don't experience Dunkin'.
Yeah,
They don't indulge in Dunkin'.
indulge in Dunkin'.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas that's what we're doing, but like they really are pushing that, go mentality, where in Australia it's like, how's your father?
Yeah.
You know?
I like
So,
that though, because I feel like
it's
that's like a
nice.
personality I kind of vibe with, just being chill and
too.
relaxed.
Me too.
Sometimes it's like, even if like it's a personality thing to like the person, but I think in America, even more so now, I think it's more like a youthful thing.
Yeah.
But in the youth, introversion is more prevalent and more like, I guess, what's it called? Like, not like romanticized like on social media. Like, I'm an introvert. I like being to myself, whatever, right? It's like more common. This very rarely do you see someone say that they're an extrovert.
Mm.
More likely, someone's going to tell you they're an introvert. If they're
Yeah.
an extrovert, they won't even use that word. They're just yapping.
Yeah.
So, which is me.
Yeah, that's true. I think that there's a lot of factors there too. And it's like, I feel like post pandemic, especially,
Yeah.
people were not talking to anybody. And if they were, it was over the internet. And like you were, just as you're viewing me right now, I'm not even wearing pants. You wouldn't even know because I'm not going to stand
It's
up
a
and
fact.
show you. I am wearing pants, don't worry. But the point is, like, everybody got so comfortable not needing to deal with people or masking all the time
Yeah.
that I think that that's more prevalent than ever, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like back pre-pandemic, people were able to mask better because they had to do it all the
Yeah.
time. And I think this is kind of an interesting point to like briefly talk about something I'm currently dealing with. So I've been looking for a new job, and I experienced something that I didn't think I was going to like experience. I had a job interview, and I've been interviewing for jobs left and right for the last 2 years, and 99% of them have been virtual, and I've been doing well. But I got to the final stage of an interview recently, and they invited me to come in on site, do a site tour, and meet the team. And I'm normally a pretty outgoing type of person when I need to be. I would say that I'm kind of an introverted extrovert, if you will.
You can turn it on.
I can turn
when
it
you
on if I need to,
Yeah.
you know. But I got to the job site and I just wanted to sit there and like suck my thumb. I was so like nervous for some reason, which I'd never like really experienced before. I got there and there was all these like heads of these departments who wanted to speak with me, where I was just kind of like deer in the headlights. I was able to respond to them, but it occurred to me in the moment that I hadn't had like a
Back and forth.
a
What's
not
called
just
a rally with them.
right, a rally, but like in person and needing to like think about my entire body movement instead of just like what's on a camera, right?
Yeah.
It was like the first time in forever, because prior to that I had a remote job, and even in my remote job we never went on camera. Like I had a counterpart that I worked with for 2 years. I still to this day don't even know what he looks like.
That's crazy.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
which it is what it is. That's the day we live in, and it's fine. But I went into this job site the other day, and I just was like, I felt intimidated just by people. These people who I respected and looked up to and like wanted to have good conversation with. Every time they opened their mouth, I went, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Like I had nothing to respond with because the whole time I was just like,
Nervous
is my
about-
fly down? Like I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that not necessarily like in a spiritual sense, but like I feel like energy is a really like big thing, and humans, like a lot of our communication is body language.
Yeah.
And once you're physically with someone, you're not talking to your computer screen.
Yeah.
In like all things considered, you could reach out and punch this person in the face. Not saying that you would,
Right.
but that act of like there's no barrier is an increase of like stress, because there's a reaction to everything that's going on
Yeah.
physically. Like there's a physical kind of manifestation of that.
Absolutely.
Which after so long being virtually online, not talking to the computer, you're like, wait,
You
I'm
don't know
talking to
how
a person.
Right.
I'm not talking to like an AI generated
Yeah.
version of a person.
Yeah, I think, and something that really exacerbated that like new struggle for me was like my recent boss in my recent position was a very, very difficult person to get along with. And same thing, I saw my boss in person 3 times in the whole 2 years I had that job, and again, barely ever saw their face because it just wasn't required for us to get on camera when we did have calls.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen any of those videos of like a chihuahua barking at another dog from behind a fence, and then somebody opens the fence, and then all of a sudden the dogs are like happy.
They
like,
don't keep that same energy.
right, and then they shut it, and then they go back to being menacing.
Yeah.
I think that like perfectly explains how people are. It's like but behind the screen, you feel protected and you feel like you can say what you want to say, act how you want to act. But then the second you're put in person, it's like now it's real. And I think what came of that, like my previous boss, we did not get along. But when we were in person, things were fine. And again, maybe it's just the simple fact that like we didn't see each other often, so it was kind of like, you know, we're in person now, so like we'll get along, so we're not at each other's throats. But I just feel like, man, as much as I like the remote flexibility of this, I really need that human interaction again. I need to be face to face so that you can see that what I'm saying matches with what my face says and
Yeah.
vice versa, and that we're not at each other's throats through the screen. Like I know for a fact that after, you know, you hang up, you're going like, oh, that mother bleeper,
Yeah.
and vice versa, where I don't think that should be happening. You know, you should be able to resolve conflict and like
I think like how we talked
have
about
human
earlier
interaction,
is
yeah.
like that fear you had is also circles into the fact of being cordial, because now there's like always a potential consequence. Not saying that that's like top of mind, but subconsciously people are gonna be less likely to say something to somebody's face as they would online. Like you look at comments, people are hiding behind the anonymity,
Yeah.
right? And they're becoming more kind of frivolous with their language or more like aggressive because they can.
Right.
Whereas if they saw these people in real life, they would never do that because there's consequence, and also not even a physical consequence. There's a consequence of like this affects you, who you are as a character.
Yeah.
Right. Because these people act like this is a caricature of them.
Yeah.
And in the workplace, it doesn't even have to be just the screen. Like in works in corporate America, if I've experienced this, or I've like kind of deduced this on how people act, is they wear the mask of the role that they are, and they don't understand that outside of this, you're just a civilian to me.
Yeah.
Like people are like,
right.
oh my god, that's the CEO, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? I could have walked by this dude on the street, and if he like bumped me and like called me like a slur, I'm gonna fight him. It's not like, oh, this guy's the CEO. If you're not paying me, then you have no power over me. But when you're in that world, they take that as like, this is, I have dominion over you now.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in reality, I always keep in the back of my head, I'm always very respectful. In the back of my head, that's something that calms me down.
Yeah.
Especially like if it's like an interview process or whatever, like this is just a dude.
Right.
Like they always say, this guy like fucking shits every day, puts his pants on one leg at a time. It's just a guy, like a bag of flesh. And he probably has that same experience with other people. And if they're pressing that like aggressiveness, that's just a reflection of what's going on in their life.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And that definitely helped me a lot in my previous role. It kept me from like literally
crashing out.
Yeah, exactly. But it's difficult, you know, and it's interesting how you have to navigate those things. And I think it's particularly interesting when like I feel like there's a huge difference between like email language and interactions, even phone language and whatnot, and that gets difficult to constantly be navigating, you know. So it's an interesting world.
I'm very good at the like corporate speak and whatever. I'll be like so mad, and I'm like, per my last email. And
see,
I'm like,
that's the problem I have. I'm not very good with it because I'm a very frank person. I feel like I want to say exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I'm being mean or anything. It's just like I don't
feel disingenuous to say otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to use these ridiculous words. I'm just going to say it exactly like it is. Hey, I'm missing that report. It's been a little while. You know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyway,
the further you go up in your career, I think the more that's valued and the more it's respected. But like sometimes, like in the beginning of like coming out of school and like, getting your first jobs, you're like doe-eyed, and you're like, I just want to people please. So I'm trying to learn how to like get out of that too and like be more firm.
Yeah, there's a good middle ground for sure.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I always have like a rule of thumb is like I will never let somebody else like ruin my situation based off of their actions. So if someone like does something to like kind of like screw me over or like is like going off on me retaliating in that same regard is not even like, oh, it's because it's the right thing to do. No, it's like a self benefit thing. Like I will not let you make me crash out and then I get in trouble. I'm not going to give you that power over me. This is a selfish act in which I am being nice. I'm not being nice to make you happy. I'm being nice so that my situation can be taken care of, because I'm not going to let you kind of disrupt that.
That's wise. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard, but
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Australia.
Yeah, back to us. Well, we can like link those two things together. How's like the kind of working culture there? Is like, because American working culture is kind of like head down, work corporate ladder type situation. Is it similar over there, or is it like more relaxed like the rest of the?
So that really is the perfect segue, because I think that is probably the biggest topic of conversation when it comes to cultural difference and cultural shock, if I'm being frank.
That's your Miles. No,
oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Dad joke.
So their working culture is what you would hope any successful country would be doing. it's hard for me to admit, but I feel like as a suburban white Chicago dude, I was very egocentric and never really realized it and thought that like, this is America. Things are perfect here, or, you know, at least near. And it wasn't until I went to Australia and learned about their culture, and then got a better worldview in general and just learned about other cultures in the process, that I realized just how much better things could be here. In fact, we have very little labor laws and things protecting our workers. And just as simply to put, this sounds probably crazy to most people, but a lot of salaried workers still receive overtime. Like there's not in America, a salaried employee is exempt from federal labor laws, which sounds normal to us. Like that's what we know.
Because they're like, oh, you can't get technically overworked because you're getting a salary.
Right. But see, there you go. You're defending it.
No. That's what I'm saying. That's what their mind is. Because I've had situations where I've worked like an 18-hour day, and I'm like, what the hell? I should have got. I'm not getting hourly anymore.
Yeah. So in Australia, I don't even understand. Excuse me. The difference in definition between salaried and hourly, other than the fact that salary is guaranteed to pay even if it's a shorter day, but salaried workers are still expected to work their normal 45-hour week. Now, I'm assuming that most employers are going to kind of look past like a 50-hour work week, but like I've heard from like conversations with my wife, her family, and her friends and whatnot, that like, oh yeah, I had to put in an extra 2 hours this week, so I got overtime. I'm like, oh, you're hourly. And they're like, no, it's overtime. We should never be working.
God, I wish we had that.
Yeah, so like, she got to attend a meeting while we were dating long distance. She attended a meeting after 5 o'clock and got paid double time for it.
Man,
I'd be like, and so that's the thing. Like they talk about here's the thing. Australia is in kind of a housing crisis right now. Their housing is astronomically expensive, but I honestly think that's because people realize just how good it is to live there. And so there's a massive demand. And that's kind of another thing, honestly, that was kind of culturally or economically shocking when I went there. It is absurd how much construction is taking place in Sydney. They are building houses on every plot of land that you can see.
House on top of another house.
Yeah, it is crazy. It feels like something out of a movie. Like when you're driving down the streets here in Chicago, you see a house or two being built. You see a complex being built, and you're like, wow.
You still see some open space maybe somewhere.
Right, and you see like a construction zone, and you look at it like, wow, there's a lot of work taking place. In Australia, you'll be driving down like a suburban road, and all of a sudden they'll be building an entire subdivision simultaneously
on the side of like a highway,
like hundreds of workers. Yeah. And this is taking place everywhere. Like there's a subdivision here, across the street another, go down a mile, it's happening again. Like so much property development happening simultaneously. It's insane.
I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
And it's happening so fast that for obvious reasons I'm not able to visit Australia often, but I've gone 3 times in the last 3 years. And so I'll spend a month there at a time. A year goes by and I get to see it again just a short year later, and I almost don't recognize the suburbs of
the development's going so fast.
Yeah, like my wife's family lived in what would be considered like a rural area. They lived in a rural area. The next time I went there, it's now suburban.
It
was insane. I mean, I remembered going there. It was such a vivid time. It was the first time out of the country, and so I remember the streets. They look night and day.
So are these like people coming from outside the country in the country filling these houses, or is it like who's populating all these new developments? Like who are they accommodating for? Like, because there had to be a population of people living somewhere else until they move here.
That's a good question. I think there are a lot of factors, and I really don't know the genuine answer. I would think that people do realize just how beautiful it is to be there. And so there is a lot of immigration taking place. But the other thing to remember about Australia, if you don't know this, is the Outback.
Oh, yeah.
Australia is geographically as large as the United States.
Just a lot less livable space.
Correct. The Outback, which is uninhabitable, is like imagine if the desert was so large that the only cities that you could live in were New York, Miami, San Diego, and
Coastal cities.
Yeah, coastal, and they're pretty much like on the opposite sides
Yeah.
too.
Everything in the middle is just unoccupied.
Yeah, for
That's
the most,
Mad Max shit in there.
exactly. So there's, I think it's 35 million people in 300. No, there's a lot of people in Australia, but oh no, it's 25. I think 25 million. I think is the number. 5 million of those are all in Sydney. 20%, 20%. Don't fact check me, but the point being, 20% of every Australian lives in one city. Could you imagine that
That's
in the US?
crazy.
If we have how many 350 million people?
If 20%,
If 80 million
bad with
people
math.
lived in Chicago or something like that. I mean, it's pretty insane. And so that alone kind of tells you what's going on there with property development. So that is kind of a
80 million is pretty close. It was actually 70.
Really?
That's pretty close.
Hey,
I would never.
quick maths.
I would have made it bigger somehow. I'd be like 10 billion. What?
350 people,
Yeah. But
350 million, and
that's
500,000 or anyway.
Yeah. I didn't know
it's
that
pretty
about
wild.
Australia. That
No,
was the case.
yeah.
Maybe it's like a lot of like the younger people like are getting older, like trying to get their like own houses, like a big like kind of younger generation boom in that kind of department. But like, are they building now into the Outback to like they're like, oh, it's free real estate?
See,
Like-
that's what you would think, right? There's
But they have
so
to get
much.
water there. It's probably so expensive.
Exactly. That was my first thought.
Irrigation,
Is
shit
the
like that.
irrigation would probably completely outweigh the
benefit.
good. And that's the thing. They still have so much uninhabited coastal line. So like everywhere from the southeast part of Victoria. So you got Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, all the way up to Brisbane. There's still a lot of land.
Is that called Gold Coast or something?
Actually, the Gold Coast is further north. Gold Coast is right next to Brisbane. That's the very northern part that I was just talking about. And because they're south of the equator, it's flipped. So like when you go down to Florida, it gets hot. For them, it's the other way around. So
oh yeah, true. I didn't even think about that. That's you
Yeah.
just blew my mind.
So and
So we got to go up north to get to the hotter weather.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And-
man, I never even thought about that.
which makes sense if you think about the equator. But what blows my mind even further about that is just the change of seasons.
Yeah.
Their seasons are opposite to ours.
So June is winter.
Yes, June is winter. January is their hottest month.
That's crazy.
Meaning they celebrate Christmas. And you know how we in like the northern parts of the states, we always say like we want a white Christmas. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Like you want a little bit of snow.
to
Nobody
make
loves
it like
snow.
for the ambiance of it.
For the ambiance, you got to do it for the plot, right?
Yeah.
For the Christmas vibes, we want a little bit of snow. It's the complete opposite in Australia.
Mm.
If you're not scorching hot in a pool, it's not a hot enough Christmas day.
I remember you telling me something about like Santa, like being like a shirtless Santa or something.
Yeah. If you've ever seen Santa shirtless with like a surfboard,
It's
that seems
Australian-
like a joke to us.
That's Australian Santa.
That is their Australian Santa. That is him.
Yeah. He doesn't have reindeer. He has just like jet skis. He's going
Yeah,
through-
exactly. That's
That's
Australian
actually
Santa.
hilarious.
It's pretty crazy. And I couldn't imagine that. And so, yeah, my wife got to experience like Chicago cold, snowy Christmas for the first time in her life. And it was like a kid, seeing snow for the first time. She really loved it, which is really lovely. But yeah, it 25 or 20% of all of the country's population resides in that single city.
Yeah.
So that, kind of tells you quite a bit about the property development that's going on. They have business is booming. They've got a lot going on, but they do still have a lot of real estate that can be utilized anywhere in between Sydney and Brisbane. And so Brisbane would be kind of the equivalent because it's flipped, right? If you were to drive down to Florida, Brisbane is
That's their Florida.
Yeah, it's very tropical.
Brisbane man just off of bat salts just going crazy.
It sounded like you said bat for a second. That was what I was about
They
to
got
say.
hella bats down there too, right? It's like,
Dude, have you ever heard of a flying fox?
yeah, they're actually kind of cute in a weird
They're
way.
cute until they're flying above you when you're in a pool
They're
in
like
Brisbane.
big as hell.
They're,
They're like
huge.
They're like
So the thing
this
about the
big
Gold
probably.
Coast, imagine Florida, right? It's very similar in my opinion. Like you're just in this coastal, tropical, palm tree, really hot and muggy area. Like you plop me down there, I would think I was in Florida. But then you see one of these gigantic, like 3-foot wingspan bats fly over your head, and they're everywhere.
That's like a flying dog.
Yes.
Flying dingo.
Dude, I was so afraid of that, man.
That's scary as hell. Flying shit scares the fuck out of me. If something's on the ground, I will not be scared of it.
Yeah.
If something starts flying, that's because they're unpredictable.
Yeah. And again, because that's the tropical area, there's this huge stigma against Australia. Like everyone's like
Weird creatures coming out of every corner. And
exactly.
orifice.
They're like, that's where everything there is trying to kill you. There's some truth to that in the sense that like, yes, they do have some crazy stuff, but you would say the same thing about Florida. They've got crocs. They've got all these,
Snakes,
that's just
everything.
Swampy area for you.
Yeah, but Australia got some crazy shit. Everything is like nuclear. Like a spider is like this big, or a huntsman spider or whatever.
But that is way more common, again, up north in Brisbane than Sydney. You don't see that kind of stuff as much.
The warmer places, the more likely you're gonna get like some out of control shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly. So we did a road trip the last time we were there. We flew into Sydney, where her family's from. Got into a car and did like the whole eastern coastline, which is where the majority of the population lives. I mean, we basically saw the majority of Australia. Sorry, Perth and Adelaide, but I got to see the majority of the main cities, and it's amazing. It really is cool. But like that's the thing though. Once you're in the cities, and not even the cities, just the suburbs, it is remarkably American to me. In fact. My wife says that a lot of Australians like hate to admit it, but they want to be like us. So when you go into a store, like you go into like H&M or whatever,
it's just like Katy Perry playing,
right? Well, naturally, but even more so, they'll have like Lakers paraphernalia or like Chicago Bulls.
Funny, actually.
And
they couldn't be furthest away from that situation.
Yeah, on a polar opposite side of the planet, and they're still repping like Chicago Bulls stuff. And it's weird because you walk into like we have TJ Maxx, they call it TK Maxx. Don't ask me why.
That's hilarious.
It's actually spelled TK.
You can't sue that far away.
Right? I don't know what the deal is, but. You walk in and you see all this stuff that like feels so much like Chicago, like home. You see New York. You'll forget that you're in another country. That's how Americanized it is. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I was also gonna ask about like keeping it in that same like Oceania area. So I always thought that New Zealand was kind of like Australia's like New Jersey, like not in the sense of like it's like so close, but like right off the side, like they're like a stone's throw away.
Yeah.
From what I understand, though, it's like a very different kind of vibe there. Is it that the case?
Yeah.
Because I know you've been to New Zealand as well.
Yeah. We went to New Zealand just for a couple of days, so I can't talk about the South Island. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go there, which is the place you really want to be. But I know the South Island is even way more different from Australia than the North Island is. And yes, I would say that it's quite a bit different. The main difference for me was that there's a huge prevalence of the Maori culture there. New Zealand was one of the very last countries to be taken over by England. They're part of the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth like invading sort of war vibe that they had going for so long kind of started to peter out when New Zealand became a thing.
They're outside of their prime.
They were kind of
they're not in their prime anymore. They didn't have the same imperialist kind of juice they used to have.
Precisely. And so they kind of showed up and were like, hey, we're taking over, but like you guys can stick around. Like you guys got good food. I like your shows.
It's like you have like an abusive parent and they get older, like,
exactly.
Just do whatever you want to do.
So what you have in New Zealand is this really interesting blend of like your British Commonwealth type of city, and then a very much Maori Polynesian tribe like cohabitating. In fact, as we continue on in history, New Zealand is setting a lot of precedents and like trying to give back. So like Australia, America, we're known for naming things after like Native American or Aboriginal things in Australia. But like New Zealand is taking it really far in saying like, hey, we don't feel that it's right for us to have non-natives in our government. They should be like 45% or whatever. Don't quote me on the stats, but I'm saying like New Zealand is bringing up a lot of really interesting points and actually like trying to give back to the Maori culture. And I can't remember how much. I think it's only 10%, but that's 1 in 10 people. That's quite a bit. If you consider like how many Native Americans that you interact with every day, I honestly don't know if I've ever met one.
Half of the places we go to are named after Native American kind of like culture or language.
Do you like Native American food?
Like, I saw that the post the other day. They're like, "Oh, do you like Native American food?" And I was like, "What is Native American food?"
Right. I never even thought
But
of
that's
that.
the thing. It's like when you think about it, it's like we kind of have that terminology of like Native American, but like this is a callback to an older podcast I did with my cousin. Was like how America was even called was like from Amerigo Vespucci. So like he was like just an explorer. He saw it, America, like the land, and he's like, "Oh shit, there's some place here." And he never landed. He just went back, and then Columbus came afterwards.
Oh yeah.
But they named the Americas after him, which in then reality, it's like calling someone Native American is also like a Native European term on top of it. So like, I don't even think they qualify like themselves as that. Like indigenous is another word,
Right.
or like Aboriginal for Australians,
Right.
like. And so if you base it off of like, okay, Native American, like that's a where does the line draw when like Native American to like Native Mexican, right? Because like there's a lot of like Native Mexican culture that's still
Yeah.
alive. Their food is like alive.
Yeah.
It's a amalgamation of what came through with Spain as well. Like I don't know like where one starts and one ends.
Right.
So it's like how much of that similarity goes up to like that borderland, like in the Texas area, and then all the way to like Illinois or like the Cherokee lands that are further north.
Yeah.
Like
it's very
that's
interesting.
native. Just the same. It's like a same landmass. We decided to align. So there's Native American, Native Mexican.
Yeah.
But if before that they were all just native to whatever this land is, or
Right.
not even native, they're just like I'm just this here. I'm a guy.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
that's and this is like a huge jump, but have you ever thought about like 23andMe? Have you ever taken one of those tests?
No, I haven't.
They say like Polynesian or Native American on there. But if you think about it, like what exactly determines that? Like if I were to take one,
Where does one start and one end?
right, exactly. Like it were to say like I'm part German. Well,
Yeah. Well, German is a society now.
right.
It wasn't German always.
Right. So how does it
Like,
exactly
what am I
know?
part Russian or am I part Soviet? Like,
Right. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like if things changed due to, powers over the time, like what am I really?
yeah,
I find that fascinating and it's interesting. We'll never know.
yeah.
Um,
But also, like for Native Americans, right? Like from what I understand is that they're a descendants of like Asiatic people who went through Russia through like that. What is it called? The Bering Strait or whatever. There's like a land bridge that connects Russia and Alaska, and then they went from there down all the way to as far as Chile. That's why I think some Native American features are similar to like some like
that would make sense.
Pacific Islander features or like Asian features, right? Where it's like even I don't know how far Hawaii is from like New Zealand, but like Polynesian covers I think both those landmasses, but they're so far away.
It does. And actually I learned a lot about that while I was in both Australia and New Zealand. And that's what Moana is about. Fun fact. It's actually the fact that like people from Malaysia, ancient Malaysia,
Yeah.
were running out of landmass and wanted to seek more, and they just basically built their canoes and decided to head eastward. Full send, head eastward. Hopefully,
Don't even
they hit
know if
land.
there's something there or not.
Right, but that's the thing. There's actually, if you look at Oceania, if you look at
Yeah.
the Polynesian islands, there's so many, and the waters are actually incredibly shallow. When you're flying over it,
You could see the ground.
you
Or,
can
like,
kind of
underneath
see
the bank or whatever.
almost the bank, and the waters are very light. And it's just like, I remember being on the plane from Sydney to New Zealand and thinking to myself, like, as I was looking down with the window seat, like, I could see how that could be done. It
Yeah.
seemed impossible, but when you look at it from like top down, you're like, somebody with enough balls
Yeah.
could have very well built a canoe and made it there.
Yeah.
Packed up enough coconuts and pig meat, whatever it took.
Yeah.
I can see how Moana is actually kind of realistic. I mean, it happened. I'm not suggesting that it didn't, but it's just like it was so
Conspiracy where like aliens just pick them up, drop them somewhere
It's
else.
just so interesting to like be in a plane and look down and see how it could very well have happened. And to your point, yes, they have similar features because they all came from a similar area. They actually have like maps where you can see how over time
The
which
routes
ones
they took and stuff.
yeah. And New Zealand was the very last one they found, which is so funny because New Zealand is a very large island. It is not a small country. It's
they
two
went from-
huge islands, but it's just so far south.
Yeah.
It's southeast of Australia.
So they went from Malaysia to New Zealand, and did another faction go to Hawaii? Is that how that worked?
Pretty
Or-
much. They
okay.
just went in different like
directions,
tribes.
whatever they hit
just
first.
Yeah, and it happened over centuries too. It wasn't like, you know,
So a road trip.
right. Yeah, like you guys head that way, we'll
Yeah.
head this way. Good luck.
Text
like
me.
right. It was like hundreds of years in between when they decided they needed to do these journeys. And they would just head east essentially. And yeah, when they head directly east from Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, that area, they would run into these islands and then habitate them, create their own unique culture. And that had happened for many hundreds of years, where they found every single plot of land for the most part in Oceania, and it's just somehow missed New Zealand because it's just so far south. But it's massive compared to all the other islands, which is just so fascinating. And so there had been this huge lull in time where I think between like 1200 and 1600, there was no like canoe traveling. They were like, all right, we found it all. We're good now. And finally they like went on another trip like 400 years later or something like that.
Fucked around, found New Jersey somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And then they found New Zealand. And so the crazy thing, like this is what I find so amazing about New Zealand and their unique Maori culture. It is one of, if not the youngest cultures that is known to mankind, because when the Polynesian settlers got there and started creating their new culture that's called Maori, that happened 400 years ago.
That's not long
400
at all.
years ago. And then
There's like universities older than that,
exactly.
like Oxford or whatever.
Precisely. And that's the thing. Then the English settlers come in not much longer. They don't, that tribe
The fuck? They
right.
beat us.
Right. That tribe came in for like 400 years later, something like that. It was so their unique, like untouched culture only existed for 400 years. Now they're still around, but obviously there's only 10% of the population of New Zealand is Maori, and they're integrated seamlessly into like, you know, our their society and whatnot. So they're trying to like build Maori culture back up. They realize it's such a young and relatively untouched, unique culture that they're trying not to let it die off and really let it like blossom again. So New Zealand, actually, I don't know if you know this, and it's one of my favorite facts. New Zealand, just like you were talking about, having the name like Native America. Why would we call them that if it was never called America in the first place? New Zealand is internationally recognized by its colonized name, New Zealand, and its original Maori name, Aotearoa.
I don't say that again.
Aotearoa.
Okay.
I'll put it up on the screen.
How you spell it?
It's
right
really cool. And you can like legally say, like if you went and got like a New Zealand,
Aotearoan.
yes, if you were Maori and living in New Zealand and you got a license or a passport, you can choose to use New Zealand or Aotearoa because that is like the legitimate
That sounds
name.
cooler. Not gonna lie.
It sounds super cool.
Yeah.
I bought a hat and I was so into it. I wanted to get like the New Zealand silver fern tattoo. I was so into it when I went.
How would your Australian in-laws feel about that? Do they have like beef or anything, or is it like
they
chill?
consider each other cousins.
Okay.
If a Kiwi and an Australian meet, they're like,
So
oh,
a Kiwi is
cousin.
a New Zealander. Does
Correct.
it matter whether you're native or like just a white dude from Australia? Are you still a Kiwi?
No, Kiwi's Kiwi. New Zealander, whether you're like Maori or someone from Europe or myself if I would move there.
Yeah.
I think technically you'd be considered Kiwi just by living there.
Oh, okay. It's just a term for the
Yeah, it just means that you're from New Zealand.
Location-wise.
Yeah.
yeah. That's really interesting. It's like my bucket list to go, and it's like so weird to like see like the difference in like geography between
Well,
New Zealand and Australia.
Precisely. That was the very next thing I was going to say. So, the main difference I found is that New Zealand is way greener. Like New Zealand feels fertile. It feels young.
Yeah.
Like I like to say this,
It's
but then
living.
people, I like to say this, but people say that it sounds like I just have a pica problem, whatever it's called, that like dirt eating
that?
issue. But I'm like, New Zealand feels so young and alive and fresh and fertile that I feel like I could take a bite out of the dirt and it would taste like chocolate.
That's the podcast.
It's really cool. Where Australia is dry, like
Yeah.
at least Sydney, where it's
You're
like
gonna need
comfortable.
a drink if you're gonna take a
Right.
bite out of Australia.
Right. It's really nice. It's beautiful. But like
Yeah.
if you start going toward the Outback or like you just drive north or any direction really from Sydney, you get away from the downtown area, you will feel like, ooh, yeah, I wouldn't want to get much further than this because I'd need a bottle of water with me. Like it does feel
It's
like
scary.
what you would think
It's kind of
Australia.
like it's kind of a land ocean. Like
Yeah, exactly.
deserted, like obviously desert, but like literally deserted.
Right. Where New Zealand doesn't have that problem. They have a lot of waterfalls, a lot of lakes. Like look into Lake Taupo. It is a crazy lake. In the North Island, they just have this enormous lake in the middle, and it's actually a caldera, massive super volcano in the middle of the northern island, and it's lying dormant, but I think it's active actually. And they're like, yeah, this super volcano could take out pretty much the entire world, and we just like this is just like a tourist town. But
That's
yeah, like if
crazy.
you're on the water, which we did, they're like, yeah, you're actively on top of a super volcano right now.
Nuclear Pompeii just. So do they have a similar infrastructure situation to Australia? Like when you go, do you like you said Australia feels like American to a degree. Does New Zealand feel that same kind of way? But is the implementation of like their native culture more prevalently affect that?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge touristy vibe to New Zealand as well. That's actually
Australia's
like
more residential.
yeah, exactly. Australia feels really like residential. People aren't really always going there for vacation. New Zealand is a huge tourist area. I think their number one source of income actually is tourism. But that's not to say that it feels like Disney fake or anything. It's just that it's so abundantly beautiful and they have so much to offer that naturally that would be the case.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of like a beautifully perfect size of an island where they have a unique way that you would want to travel the place. It's like obvious that you wouldn't want to get a hotel in New Zealand. It's so big and small at the same time that you wouldn't even hesitate to get a camper van to go see the entire thing. That's the thing. Like it's so just vast, but you don't want it to stop. Like you couldn't pick a specific area and be like, I'm just going to see Rotorua or I'm just going to see Watamea. Like you want to see it all.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a camper van and stay for like 2 weeks and drive and just see all of it.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask like a good way to like, since we have so many other topics we could talk about, we could save for other episodes, but to put a cap on this episode for Australia and New Zealand, if I were, which I am, a person who would want to visit, let's say, would it be smart to make 2 separate trips for Australia and New Zealand, or one for each? Like you have to like, could you knock them both out in one, like, let's say week and a half trip?
The big question is how much time do you have?
Yeah.
But knowing that we're living in corporate America,
It's hard to get that.
and the easy answer is knock them both out, which is the only reason I did it. And truth be told, I didn't really know anything about New Zealand when I went.
Yeah.
I just knew that it was, as you put it, a stone's throw away from Australia, and was like, hey, I'm already going to be in another country for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
3.5 weeks. Why don't I take 3 or 4 of those days to go to a neighboring country? I don't know. And I just happened to go to like the world's most beautiful country. I didn't really know anything about New Zealand until I was there, and I really wish I had known more about it and spent more time there. But it made it way more doable. Now, again, I'm a little biased because I was spending time with her family. Obviously, I didn't have to pay for like a hotel in Australia, but that's what made New Zealand so affordable for me at the time.
Yeah.
And it made so much sense because it wasn't like I was going from Chicago to New Zealand. I was visiting family in Sydney and took time to take a 3-hour flight to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Where actually now I can comfortably say that you should definitely see both, because there used to be, for the longest time, a flight directly from Chicago to
Auckland or something.
to Auckland, exactly, through Air New Zealand. And I was almost on the very last flight they did.
Wait, they don't do that anymore? You have to
They
go
don't
to
do it
Australia
anymore.
now?
Well, it doesn't specifically have to be through Australia, but that's kind of like
Yeah,
the
if it-
natural path that you would take.
Or you'd go to like Asia or something and then take
Right.
a stop there.
Which is the first thing I did. The first time I went to Australia, I went through Tokyo.
Okay.
I stopped there briefly and then went down. But they stopped doing the flight from Chicago to O'Hare, and I actually I didn't miss the flight. They canceled it on me one of the times I went to go visit my wife. I went to bed, and I had a flight the next morning, and I woke up to a text at like 11 o'clock at night saying,
Hey,
your
buddy,
flight's been...
keep your bags packed.
Yeah. And they stopped doing it. The airplane broke down, and I guess like statistically, they've just had a really hard time for whatever reason going back and forth. It's such a long flight. They just don't do it anymore. You would have to fly probably to LA then to or something, Houston to whatever, but they don't go to O'Hare anymore, which now would make it quite a bit more challenging.
Is it because of the length of the trip?
It
Like
probably-
it's cutting it close on fuel and like
Probably.
hey, after everything's been going on with these airplane shit, just do whatever
But
you got to do and make it like
Another little crazy story to read. The 11-hour flight to nowhere is what they titled it. I was supposed to be on that flight.
that's
What happened? This legitimately
terrifying.
Yeah, this legitimately happened. So I was in Chicago, obviously waiting for the plane to arrive from Auckland, and the night prior to my flight that would return to Auckland. And that night, the plane took off from Auckland. They had a catastrophic failure, but they were fine. Like they could still fly the plane, but they needed to head back to Auckland. They were halfway, Nadir. They flew 5 hours to the ocean. U-turned it, went back to Auckland. So all these people that were on the flight flew for 11 hours to get right back to where they were. These people were supposed to show up to Chicago and never did. They titled it the 11-hour flight to nowhere, and I was supposed to be on that same plane that was supposed to go back the following day.
That's terrifying. I'm flying to Las Vegas soon, and I'm scared. I'm like,
Yeah,
I couldn't even imagine over the middle of nothing.
Thankfully, we were able to get another flight
Yeah.
on the spot, but I was very lucky.
Well, it's a good way to end the pod on something very terrifying, but this won't be the last of Miles. Miles will come back.
Yeah, this was fun. Absolutely.
Where could they you want them to like put anything that people could follow you at, like social media or anything like that? Or you could be like, hey,
Sure, if you want to help me get a job, you can
Yeah,
look me
true.
up on LinkedIn.
Well, what are your skill sets? Because then you could like give yourself like a little plug right now.
Yeah, I'm a good husband. I'm trying to be a good dog father. No, I'm in facilities management. I know how to manage buildings.
I know how to manage facilities.
Yeah, I manage facilities by facility managing them with good managerial facility skills. And
This is what you said in that interview when you were with those people.
Exactly. But yeah, no, if you want to look me up on LinkedIn or whatever, I'm not on any other social media though. So
okay.
I'm just here to support the pod. So yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, as always, you can follow the pod on Instagram at Danger Knock. Follow me at AcroNM, blah, blah, blah. If you're watching this, you already know who I am at this point. I don't have any non-friend fans, I guess, at the moment. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Thank you. That was sick.